Well, Vicki, thanks very much for coming in and visiting with us today.
Thank you, Ken.
How'd your first session go?
It was great. It was very much an honor to be up there serving our citizens in the 17th Legislative District. And I'm very glad to say now I've completed one session, at least the formal session, now heading into special session. But very, very glad to be there serving.
And now you're officially a lawmaker because your first bill was signed into law by the governor. Tell us about that.
Yes, that was just yesterday, as a matter of fact. And HB 2138, my bill to help disabled veterans be able to get into adaptive housing if they have lost a limb or have some other disability with a tax exemption, did pass into law. I was very thankful to be able to have that bill as my first bill, being able to help our veterans and those that have really served us and served our country. This is the least we can do for them, and I just want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to support our veterans.
Tell us a little bit about how that became your first bill.
Well, it's been interesting, actually, as I was looking at possible legislation for this first year. A constituent had brought forth the need really and asked for some tax relief on adaptive housing. And so that legislation had been brought forth previously, and prior session that had come forth and didn't move through. So this year that came to my attention, and I said, you know what, this is a great bill and this is a great way we can support our veterans. So was very excited to sponsor it this year, be able to get it all the way through the process, get the support needed to go ahead and do that, and then have it signed into law yesterday by the governor.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
Obviously, a big portion of every session is budget. And
Yes.
A huge part of the budget is education funding.
Absolutely.
Tell
this
us
year.
about your experience in this session with those issues.
Yeah, well, as you just mentioned, Ken, the McCleary decision and the need to fully fund education, basic education from the state level, really has put an interesting and unique dynamic on this session. And certainly not an easy dynamic in all situations, but realistically, as we look at having to fund basic ed, it has to be done in a way we know we can fund it and make sure that we are, taking care of our students, helping their achievement, making sure that those outcomes are there for them in their futures, as well as, helping our teachers, making sure that we can recruit and retain good teachers. And so with this session, the Senate put forth a proposal that would do those things, and it helps make sure that we are addressing the McCleary decision issues, all the way from not being able to rely on local levies anymore, and those having to really, basic ed has to be funded from the state. So the Senate's proposal does a fantastic job of making sure that we are doing that and having that local levy effort really at the state level now. And what that does is it also makes sure that we are reducing those inequities between the school districts around the state. So in the east side, for example, where it's property poor and they can't typically raise local levy funds like, say, Seattle can, now that's going to be equaled out. So all students and all school districts will have those funds needed for education to happen. And one of the other exciting things that proposal does is it raises the starting teacher salaries from $35,000 to $45,000. So that need, that is real. I mean, we hear it, before session. ESD 112 here hosted an education forum with our local superintendents. Heard it very loud and clear from our educators. We need more teachers. We need good teachers. So that $45,000 salary start level is fantastic. So, there's still more discussions to be had, and certainly, with the other proposal that's on the table, with the Democrats' proposal that they put forth for education, it's really unfunded. The current funds and revenues do not exist to pay that education price tag, and so. Really, there's a lot more discussions that will continue. We're in special session now, and I'm excited to see what we end up with as a final proposal. But the bottom line is we need to make sure that we're prioritizing and we are able to fund the plan and do it within existing revenues. We do not need to add new taxes. You know, if we would fund education first in the budget and really prioritize it, we wouldn't even be really having this conversation. It'd be already settled.
You know, obviously an issue that Clark County residents are very passionate about is transportation solutions.
Absolutely.
You've been very active on this issue.
Yes.
Since we visited 2-3 months ago on this subject, what has been some of your experiences and some of your perceptions about this issue?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it has been an ongoing issue, as we know, for several years, and I have heard very loud and clear from the citizens of Clark County, and certainly in the 17th Legislative District, do not make me sit in traffic anymore when I'm trying to get back and forth to Portland, getting to my job. Don't keep me away from my family and my kids. Loud and clear, got it. And I agree, we shouldn't be. And if you also look at the freight mobility, right, that is a real need because obviously with the Port of Portland situations that have happened in the last few years, we have more freight going down the I-5, adding to the congestion. So I did a transportation town hall jointly with Representative Liz Pike. She was great to ask me to join her in February on that. We heard from the citizens, put out some different options, got that feedback. And then following that, I did a transportation survey with over 300 responses, which actually was the highest amount of responses in the House Republican caucus, the highest amount of responses received back on any survey. So it just shows you that this is a real priority for our citizens. It has to get fixed, and we can't just keep kicking this can down the road. So with that survey, one of the questions was, in order to reduce I-5 traffic congestion, what type of solution would you like to see? And I had, you know, a solution or connection west of I-5, east of I-205, I-5 bridge replacement, a tunnel. And what was interesting was the west side option came back as number one. And I think when people really, as you stop and look at, if the objective is reducing traffic congestion, if that's the real main objective, and we're talking about the I-5 corridor, most people, you know, will say, you've just got to get another connection so you can get that traffic off. And so that's what I've really been focused on over the last month or so, is really that west side option. And as that feedback was coming into me from citizens, about the same time, I happened to realize that Oregon Representative Rich Vial had introduced legislation that would create an opportunity, and it was a mechanism for local citizens and local governments in the Portland metro area to create local access highways. One of the things he talked about that might be possible with that, not in the bill, but as a result of that bill, would be, you know, a Northwest Passage. Instantly I went, there's a possibility here for a west side connection. So I met with Representative Vial. We've had several conversations. I, you know, was able to draft a letter of support and provided that to him. You know, some of the legislators here in Southwest Washington signed on to that, really to say, you know, we support a third option is really what that letter was about. And following that, I introduced an amendment to the transportation budget that ran through the House right at the end of session, which would have carved out $300,000 in the transportation budget to do a, you know, consultative study on the possibility for a west side option. What could that look like, and what would be needed around that? Unfortunately, it didn't pass, but certainly was another step in the right direction as far as, you know, having this discussion. And so the good news is there is, you know, been bipartisan support on the other side of the river for this possibility. And certainly we have support here on this side. And so I am really hopeful that this dialogue will certainly open up more conversation about a west side option, but really, you know, maybe lead us into that formal dialogue with our Oregon colleagues and, you know, come up with solutions, short term and long term, for our citizens.
Well, on behalf of citizens of Clark County, good luck with that effort because, like you say, we're all passionate about not sitting in that I-5 corridor in our cars. So
Yeah.
I applaud your efforts and wish you good luck with that. Well, thank you very much for coming in today and visiting with us.
Thanks so much, Kenny, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.